You hear it before the war is even fully underway. Laughter, quiet at first, then open, confident. Japanese staff officers study maps of the Pacific and shake their heads at the numbers coming out of Washington. Shipyards, trucks, fuel, rations, ammunition. They do the math and dismiss it. America is far away. America is soft. America has never fought a modern war across an ocean this vast. The rule feels obvious. No nation can sustain a war thousands of miles from home. Not for long. Not under fire. In Tokyo, logistics officers assure generals that the Americans will choke on their own supply lines. Steel rusts, engines fail, convoys stretch thin, men grow hungry, armies collapse not from bullets but from empty hands. The Imperial Japanese Army has studied this. They watched Russia bleed in 1905. They watched Germany starve in 1918. Distance kills armies. So when the first American landings begin Guadalcanal, then Tarawa, Japanese commanders believe they are watching the beginning of the end for the United States. Not Japan. They expect hesitation, shortages, panic. Instead, they see something unsettling. More ships arrive, then more, not weeks later, days later, sometimes hours. Every loss is replaced. Every setback patched over with steel, fuel, and men. Still, the rule holds, or so they think. Because no one believes what comes next. No one believes a nation can fight an industrial war at global scale without ever running out. But in 1944, one man, isolated on a volcanic island with no hope of resupply, will understand the truth too late. You are Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi. You are 53 years old. You have lived in America. You have studied the enemy up close. You have ridden their trains, walked their cities, watched their factories work day and night. You do not underestimate them. That makes you dangerous to your own high command. Kuribayashi is not a zealot. He does not believe slogans win wars. He believes preparation does. He believes logistics decide battles long before the first shot is fired. When you are assigned command of Iwo Jima in June 1944, you understand exactly what this means. Iwo Jima is not a fortress to be relieved. It is a sacrifice. No fleet will come. No convoys will break through American submarines and aircraft. What arrives with you? 21,000 men, limited ammunition, finite food, is all that will ever exist on this island. You write letters home warning that Japan is losing a war of production. You tell your officers that Banzai charges are suicide. You order them underground. Dig, hide, endure. Because you have seen America's strength firsthand and you know this battle will not be decided by courage. It will be decided by supply. Across the Pacific, American factories are producing more than Japan can even imagine. In 1944 alone, the United States will build nearly 100,000 aircraft. Japan will build fewer than 30,000, and many without fuel to fly. American shipyards launch a new cargo vessel every 4 days. Japan cannot replace what it loses. But in Tokyo, many still believe in the rule. They believe American logistics will crack under pressure. Kuribayashi knows better. And as the rumble of distant naval guns grows louder, you prepare to prove, through defeat, how wrong your own commanders are. February 19, 1945. The ground shakes before the sun rises. You feel it through the tunnels, deep, rhythmic concussions as American battleships begin their bombardment. For 3 days, more than 450 ships will fire nearly 6,800 tons of shells onto an island just 8 square miles in size. You do not respond. That is the first shock. No counter-battery fire. No frantic radio traffic, just silence. American Marines land expecting resistance at the beaches. Instead, they find emptiness. Then the ground erupts. Machine guns open from hidden positions. Mortars fall with mathematical precision. Entire platoons disappear in seconds. But the Americans do not retreat. They keep coming. Every wounded Marine is evacuated within minutes. Fresh units rotate in. Bulldozers land under fire and begin carving roads through volcanic ash. Fuel trucks arrive. Ammunition crates stack higher by the hour. You watch through periscopes as the impossible happens. The enemy does not slow down. By day 5, American engineers have repaired airstrips under fire. By day 7, damaged ships are replaced. By day 10, naval gunfire increases, not decreases. Your men begin counting shells, not American shells, Japanese ones. You ration artillery fire. One round at a time, one target at a time, because there will be no resupply. Then the food runs low. Rice portions shrink. Water is rationed. Wounded men are given morphine or nothing at all. Above ground, American flamethrowers roar like jet engines. Napalm pours into tunnel entrances. Oxygen disappears. Men suffocate without wounds. Still, the Americans do not pause. At 1,500 yards from Mount Suribachi, they bring in fresh divisions. At 1,200 yards, they bring in tanks. At 900 yards, they bring in replacement tanks. You realize the truth with crushing clarity. They are not fighting a battle. They are running a system. A machine that does not tire. That does not improvise. That simply feeds itself forward. If you find this kind of forgotten military history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. These stories of sacrifice and strategic reality deserve to be remembered, and by subscribing, you help ensure they aren't forgotten. By day 20, organized resistance collapses into isolated pockets. Your men are starving. Ammunition is nearly gone. Radios fall silent one by one. On March 25, you lead the final night attack, not a charge, but a desperate infiltration. It fails. You are killed in the fighting. Your body is never identified. And with you dies the last illusion that logistics do not matter. What Japanese high command did not know, until it was too late, was that Iwo Jima was not an exception. It was the model. Across the Pacific, American logistics overwhelm every defensive line. Saipan, Leyte, Okinawa, each battle follows the same pattern. Japan runs out of fuel, then aircraft, then food. By 1945, entire garrisons are cut off and left to starve. Submarines sink what little shipping remains. Factories go dark from lack of raw materials. The United States never experiences a comparable shortage. By war's end, America will produce more trucks than Japan produces rifles. The rule is broken forever. Distance no longer defeats armies. Industry does. Kuribayashi's letters survive. In them, he warns that bravery without supply is death. That modern war is not won by spirit alone. Most of his men die on Iwo Jima. Fewer than 1,100 are captured alive. Today, the island is quiet. Grass grows where artillery once fell, but the lesson remains. Logistics decide wars before soldiers ever meet. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We are dedicated to rescuing forgotten stories like this from silence. If you want to join us on that mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state, and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi and the 21,000 men of Iwo Jima do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered. You are still underground when the realization hardens into certainty. This is not a siege meant to starve out an enemy. This is not a probing attack meant to test resolve. This is not even a battle in the traditional sense. This is consumption. Every hour, the Americans consume fuel, ammunition, spare parts, food, and replace all of it faster than you can destroy it. You listen to the pattern through layers of rock. Naval guns fire on schedule. Aircraft arrive in disciplined waves. There is no improvisation in their rhythm, no hesitation, no fatigue. Your officers bring reports down into the tunnels. Another landing craft destroyed. Another platoon wiped out in a crossfire. Another marine company slowed for half an hour. Half an hour. That is all the time your best defenses can buy. You ask the only question that matters now: how much ammunition remains? The answer is measured in days, not weeks. Your artillery commanders count shells like currency. Mortar crews are ordered to fire only when a kill is guaranteed. Machine gunners are told to wait until they can see the whites of eyes, then wait longer. The Americans notice the change. They begin to advance more deliberately. Tanks crawl forward behind bulldozers, steel blades pushing volcanic ash aside while engineers mark cleared lanes with flags. Behind them come trucks, fuel trucks, ammunition trucks. You watch them through a slit in the rock and feel something close to disbelief. They are building infrastructure under fire. On the 8th day, they bring in replacement flamethrower units. On the 9th, they bring in fresh infantry regiments. On the 10th, naval gunfire intensifies rather than diminishes. This is not attrition, this is replacement. You remember what you wrote months ago, that Japan cannot fight a war of machines against a nation of machines. That courage does not refill magazines. That spirit does not repair engines. Now your men begin to feel it in their bodies. Rice portions are cut again. Water is rationed to mouthfuls. Wounded soldiers beg for bandages that no longer exist. Morphine is gone. Above ground, American loudspeakers call out in broken Japanese, urging surrender. Most of your men ignore them, not because they believe victory is possible, but because surrender feels meaningless when the enemy seems infinite. On the 13th day, Mount Suribachi falls. The flag goes up. You know what it means even before the reports arrive. American aircraft will now land closer, refuel faster, strike deeper. Your remaining defenses shrink inward. By the 15th day, your radio network is fragmenting. Batteries die. Antennas are destroyed. Units vanish without reporting their end. Still, the Americans do not rush. They grind. Each bunker is isolated, each tunnel sealed, flamethrowers roar. Napalm flows like liquid fire clinging to walls, pulling oxygen out of the air. Men suffocate without ever seeing an enemy. You order no mass charges. You forbid them. Because every man who leaves cover is a man lost, and you cannot replace a single one. That is the difference now. They can. You cannot. On the 20th day, you receive the final supply report. Ammunition, critically low. Food, nearly gone. Medical supplies, exhausted. You sit in the dark and understand that the battle has already ended, even though thousands are still alive. The Americans did not defeat your tactics. They outlasted your inventory. You draft one last message. It will never be transmitted. You write that the enemy's true strength is not bravery or training, but a system that delivers exactly what is needed, exactly when it is needed without interruption. You write that Japan cannot win such a war. Then you burn the paper. On the night of March 25, you gather the remnants of your command. Fewer than 300 men remain able to fight. You do not promise victory. You promise only one final act of resistance. The infiltration begins just before dawn. For a moment, only a moment, it works. American rear areas are struck. Tents are overrun, confusion spreads, shots echo in all directions. Then the system responds, flares ignite the sky, machine guns lock in, artillery fires point blank, fresh units move in from reserve. The counterattack is immediate, overwhelming, precise. By sunrise, it is over. Your body is never identified. Your sword is never recovered. Your name is recorded only as presumed killed in action. And the island falls silent, but the lesson does not. Across the Pacific, Japanese garrisons continue to wait for supplies that will never arrive. On bypassed islands, tens of thousands starve without firing another shot. Aircraft sit on runways without fuel. Ships remain in harbor without spare parts. The Americans keep moving. They never slow. They never stop. Because the war they are fighting is not won at the front line. It is won at the factory, the port, the depot, the assembly line that never sleeps. You understood that, too late to change it, but early enough to warn history. The war does not end on Iwo Jima. It accelerates. What you understood in those final weeks, what Japanese high command refused to accept, now becomes unavoidable reality across the entire Pacific. Because Iwo Jima was never about the island, it was a demonstration. Within days of its capture, American engineers transformed the cratered ash into a functioning logistics hub. Damaged B-29 bombers limp in from raids over Japan, engines shot out, fuel tanks leaking, and land safely instead of ditching into the ocean. That single change saves crews by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Every bomber that lands instead of crashing brings back men, experience, and machines that can fly again. Every repaired aircraft means another city will burn. Another factory will vanish. Another rail yard will cease to exist. You warned that logistics decide wars. Now the proof is airborne. Japanese generals still speak of decisive battles. They still search for moments of honor, for places where spirit might outweigh steel. But the Americans no longer need decisive battles. They need throughput. In the spring of 1945, the United States Navy is operating more than 6,700 vessels worldwide. Oilers refuel task forces at sea. Floating dry docks repair ships without returning home. Refrigerated cargo ships deliver fresh food to men fighting thousands of miles from their families. Meanwhile, Japan cannot fuel its remaining fleet. Pilots train with wooden mock-ups because aviation gasoline is too precious to burn. Battleships sit idle, stripped of escorts, waiting for a final mission that everyone knows will be one way. On Okinawa, the pattern repeats. Japanese defenders fight with discipline and courage, but they fight while hungry. Ammunition is hoarded, artillery fire is rationed, medical care collapses early. The Americans respond the same way they always do. More ships, more shells, more men. If a unit takes losses, another replaces it. If a ship is damaged, another takes station. If an airfield is cratered, engineers repair it under fire. You would recognize it immediately. This is not bravery versus bravery. This is abundance versus exhaustion. By the summer of 1945, Japan's logistics system has ceased to function as a system at all. It is fragments, isolated stockpiles, scattered factories, starving garrisons, ships without fuel and fuel without ships. Submarines strangle shipping lanes. Mines block harbors. Bombers destroy rail lines faster than they can be repaired. Even food becomes a weapon. Civilians go hungry. Soldiers receive half rations, then quarter rations, then nothing. The Imperial Army had mocked American logistics at the start of the war. Now Japanese officers write desperate messages begging for rice. There is none. The Americans are not winning because they are smarter tactically. They are winning because their war machine absorbs loss and converts it into momentum. Every casualty is replaced, every error corrected, every failure studied and fixed. This is the part no one planned for. Wars before had been contests of endurance between armies. This war is endurance between economies, and only one side can endure indefinitely. When the atomic bombs fall, they do not end the war alone. They end the argument, because Japan has already run out of fuel, of aircraft, of shipping, of options. What you saw on Iwo Jima was simply the clearest expression of it. A perfectly prepared defense, manned by disciplined soldiers, commanded by a general who understood his enemy, and still doomed by empty warehouses and silent docks. After the surrender, American officers tour captured Japanese facilities. They find factories without power, warehouses without inventory, aircraft plants producing frames that will never fly. The contrast is overwhelming. In the United States, demobilization does not begin because production fails. It begins because victory makes production unnecessary. That is the final imbalance. Japan did not lose because its soldiers lacked courage. It lost because courage cannot manufacture steel. It lost because belief cannot refine oil. It lost because even the most disciplined army in history cannot fight on promises and memory. You understood that while still alive. Others will understand it only after millions are dead, and future wars will be planned differently because of it. The war ends quietly for you. No monument marks where you fell. No grave bears your name. When the Americans finally identify the dead on Iwo Jima, they cannot tell which remains belonged to a general who foresaw everything and could change nothing. But your legacy does not disappear, it spreads. In the years after 1945, militaries around the world dissect what happened in the Pacific. Not the heroics, not the speeches, the supply tables. They study shipping tonnage, fuel consumption, replacement rates, factory output curves. They notice something that cannot be unseen. The United States did not merely support its armies. It wrapped the battlefield in an industrial envelope so thick that defeat became mathematically improbable. Iwo Jima becomes a case study taught to logisticians, not tacticians. A defense designed to maximize enemy casualties failed because it could not interrupt the flow of replacements. Even perfect discipline collapsed once ammunition, food, and medical care vanished. Your letters, rediscovered and translated, confirm what the numbers already suggest. Modern war is not won at the front. It is won in the rear. That lesson reshapes everything that follows. Cold War planners build stockpiles measured in years, not months. Supply chains become redundant. Ports are hardened. Fuel reserves become strategic weapons. Logistics officers rise in prestige. Never again, they say, should an army fight while starving. To this day, the shadow of that lesson stretches across oceans. When nations plan interventions far from home, the first question is not how brave the soldiers are. It is how long the supply lines can last. You were right, too right, and far too early. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We are dedicated to rescuing stories like this from the archives before they disappear. If you want to join us on that mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state, and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi and the 21,000 men of Iwo Jima do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.